Businesswoman follows the security guard after his shift, and what she sees him doing in church changes her perspective. Jennifer Wilson had made a decision that would change everything. For weeks, small items from the company had been disappearing, and her suspicions fell on one person alone. That Friday afternoon, she would finally put her plan into action. It was exactly 6 o'clock when Michael Johnson, the night security guard, finished his shift. Jennifer was hidden behind her black Cadillac in the parking lot, watching his every move. The man in his early 40s wore his impeccable navy blue uniform and carried an old backpack that had always piqued her curiosity. Today, she would find out what was inside. Michael walked down Maple Avenue toward downtown Pittsburgh. Jennifer followed at a safe distance, keeping the car's engine idling. Her medical equipment company was going through a tough time, and any loss, no matter how small, was a setback she couldn't ignore. The man stopped in front of a small brick church with stained glass windows, glowing in the evening light. Jennifer parked across the street and watched Michael enter the building. Her first reaction was surprise. She had expected to see him meet with someone to sell the supposedly stolen goods, not walk into a church. For 20 minutes she waited outside, drumming her fingers on the steering wheel. Curiosity was killing her. Finally, she got out of the car and approached the entrance. The wooden door was slightly ajar, allowing her to peek inside unseen. What Jennifer saw left her completely stunned. Michael was kneeling before the simple altar, his shoulders shaking as he wept silently. In his hands, he clutched a worn photograph she couldn't see clearly. Tears streamed down his face as he murmured words she couldn't hear. The scene shook her deeply. She had prepared herself to catch a thief selling stolen goods, not to witness such an intimate moment of pain. For a few seconds, she questioned whether her suspicions were even right. Maybe there was another explanation for the missing items at the company. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. The next day, Monday, Jennifer arrived at the company more determined than ever to stay firm. If Michael was going through personal troubles, that didn't excuse possible theft. She greeted him curtly and kept an even colder distance than usual. Michael noticed the change in his boss's behavior immediately. In the 3 years he'd worked there, she had always been professional, but never hostile. Now there was something different in her eyes, a suspicion that made him uneasy. He began avoiding her whenever possible, which only fueled Jennifer's doubts further. By Wednesday, she decided to inspect the employees' lockers, something she'd never done before. Michael was on his rounds when she opened his personal locker. What she found left her even more confused. There were no company items, just several expensive medicine bottles and prescriptions under different names. Jennifer picked up one of the bottles and checked the pharmacy label. It was blood pressure medication costing over $200. There were at least 6 different bottles, all for chronic treatments for the elderly. The prescriptions were under names like Mrs. Dorothy Smith, Mr. Walter Thompson, and others she didn't recognize. The discovery left her deeply puzzled. If Michael was stealing from the company, why would he spend the money on medicine for other people? And where did he get so much money to buy such expensive medications? A security guard's salary certainly wouldn't cover such expenses. That afternoon, she followed him again after work. Michael stopped first at a discount pharmacy downtown. Jennifer watched him buy more medicine, paying with his own money. The man carefully checked a handwritten list before leaving the pharmacy. Then he went straight to the same church as on Friday. This time, Jennifer decided to go inside and hide behind the back pews. What she witnessed moved her deeply. Michael was distributing the medications to a group of elderly people waiting for him at the church door. They were simple folks, clearly in need, who greeted him with grateful smiles and tears in their eyes. "Thank you, son," said a white-haired lady. "Without you, I wouldn't be able to afford my heart medicine." "No need to thank me, Mrs. Betty," Michael replied kindly. "We're here to help each other." Jennifer watched the scene for over an hour. Michael didn't just hand out medicine. He talked with each elderly person, asked about their health, and wrote down new requests on his list. It was meticulous work, full of care. When she got home that night, Jennifer couldn't sleep. Her certainties were crumbling. The next day, she decided to dig deeper into Michael's life. She discovered he worked 2 other jobs on weekends, as a security guard at a mall and as a doorman in an apartment building. Her research revealed something even more touching. Michael had lost his mother 5 years earlier due to a lack of proper medication. She had diabetes and high blood pressure, but the family couldn't afford to buy the medicine regularly. Since then, he had vowed to help other elderly people in the same situation, turning his personal pain into a life mission. Over the following weeks, Jennifer began to see Michael in a new light. She noticed his dedication to work, his kindness toward all the employees, and his genuine concern for the well-being of those around him. He always arrived 15 minutes early and only left after making sure everything was in order. One morning, arriving early at the company, Jennifer found Michael asleep in the locker room. Concerned, she gently woke him. Embarrassed, he explained he had spent the night helping Mrs. Margaret, one of the elderly women from the church, who had fallen ill. He hadn't had time to go home before work. Touched by his dedication, Jennifer made an impulsive decision. She called the accountant, Amanda Thompson, and asked her to secretly increase Michael's salary. She wanted him to have more resources to help the elderly without compromising his own livelihood. "Jennifer, before we do this, I need to show you something," Amanda said with a worried expression. "I found some irregularities in the company finances that might be linked to Michael." The accountant's words made Jennifer's blood run cold. Amanda showed bank statements revealing monthly transfers from the company account to an external one. The amounts weren't huge, but they had been consistent for over 6 months. "Are you sure these transfers weren't authorized?" Jennifer asked, feeling her suspicions rush back in full force. "Absolutely sure," Amanda replied. "And the worst part is, I found out where the money is going. It's to a joint account for a nursing home on the outskirts of town." The revelation left Jennifer furious. How had she been so naive? The medicine story was just a cover for a bigger scheme. Michael wasn't just stealing supplies, he was embezzling money directly from the company accounts. Jennifer spent the weekend preparing a full dossier against Michael. She gathered all the evidence of the transfers, planned how to confront him, and even consulted a lawyer about the legal action she could take. On Monday, she would fire him and sue him for embezzlement. However, something inside her urged caution. Before confronting Michael, she decided to personally track where the money was going. On Tuesday, she drove to the nursing home mentioned by Amanda. It was a humble but well-kept place that housed needy elderly people from the area. The director of the nursing home, Mrs. Gladys Parker, welcomed her warmly. When Jennifer mentioned the bank transfers, the woman smiled and explained the situation. The money wasn't being stolen by Michael. In fact, someone at the company had been diverting funds for years, and Michael had uncovered the scheme. "That young man is an angel," said Mrs. Gladys. 6 months ago, he came here saying he'd discovered money being stolen from the company where he works. He managed to trace where the money was going and decided to document everything to expose the real culprit. The revelation left Jennifer stunned. Michael wasn't the thief. He was the one who had uncovered the real scheme. The money reaching the nursing home was the result of embezzlement by someone else at the company, someone with access to the accounts and enough knowledge to hide the transfers. "But who's doing this?" asked Jennifer, feeling the world spin around her. "According to Michael, it's someone close to the company's leadership," replied Mrs. Gladys. "He's been gathering evidence for months, but he's afraid to report it because he needs the job to help the elderly from the church." Jennifer left the nursing home with her mind racing. If Michael wasn't the culprit, who could it be? Only 3 people had unrestricted access to the company's accounts: herself, Amanda, and Richard Stevens, the financial manager who had worked with her for over a decade. The suspicion about Richard was unsettling. He was her trusted right-hand man, someone who knew every financial aspect of the company. If he was embezzling money, he was doing it so subtly that even Amanda hadn't noticed at first. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. That night, Jennifer went straight to the church where she knew she'd find Michael. He was kneeling in his usual spot, holding the photograph she now knew was of his mother. She approached quietly and sat on the bench behind him. "Michael," she called softly. He turned, startled, and quickly wiped away his tears. "Mrs. Jennifer, I didn't know you were—" "I know about the money," she said directly. "I know you found out who's stealing from the company." Michael's face paled. For a moment, he looked like a cornered animal, ready to flee. Then his shoulders slumped in resignation. "I can explain everything," he said, his voice trembling. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "Why didn't you tell me from the start?" asked Jennifer, trying to keep her voice steady. Michael looked at the photograph in his hands before answering. "Because I needed to be sure, and because—" He hesitated. "Because I was afraid of losing my job. Without the salary, I can't help the elderly. They depend on me." "Show me the evidence," said Jennifer. Michael pulled a folder from his backpack. Inside were months of meticulous documentation, bank statements, transfer receipts, internal emails, and even photos of documents. Everything pointed to Richard Stevens as the one responsible for the embezzlement. "How did you find out?" asked Jennifer, impressed by the organization of the evidence. "I always stay late to make sure everything's in order," explained Michael. "One night I saw Mr. Richard tampering with the accounting computer after hours. I found it strange and started paying attention. That's when I noticed he always stayed late on Wednesdays, always at the same time. Michael had spotted a pattern. Every Wednesday, Richard would arrive early and leave late. It was always on that day the suspicious transfers were made. The security guard began documenting everything, taking pictures of the computer screens when Richard thought he was alone. "Why didn't you come straight to me?" Jennifer insisted. "Because I know Mr. Richard has been your friend for many years," Michael replied. "I'm just a security guard. Who would believe my word over his?" Michael's humility and fear touched Jennifer deeply. She realized how her own behavior had contributed to him feeling inferior and unprotected. For years, she had maintained a hierarchical distance that prevented honest communication. "Michael, I need you to forgive me," she said, tears in her eyes. "I suspected you. I even thought you were stealing from the company." "I noticed," he answered with a sad smile. "You changed toward me these past few weeks. That made me even more nervous to speak up." "What about the medicine? The elderly at the church?" Jennifer asked. Michael explained his whole story. After losing his mother, he had promised never to let another elderly person go without medication because of money. He worked 3 jobs and dedicated nearly all his income to buying medicine and distributing it at the church. "Is that her photo?" Jennifer asked, pointing to the picture he held. "Yes," Michael answered, showing the worn portrait of a smiling woman. "I come here to talk to her. I tell her about the people I'm helping. I think she'd be proud." The simplicity and purity of that confession moved Jennifer in a way she hadn't expected. For years, she had focused only on profits and growth, completely forgetting the human side of business. "We'll need to come up with a plan to expose Richard," she said firmly. "But this time, we'll do it together." In the following days, Jennifer and Michael worked together to devise a strategy. She pretended to know nothing while Michael kept documenting Richard's suspicious activities. The plan was to gather enough evidence for a final confrontation. During their joint investigation, Jennifer discovered aspects of the company she'd never noticed. Michael knew every employee by name, their families, and personal struggles. He was a respected and beloved figure, while she was seen only as the distant boss. "Why did you choose to work in security?" she asked during one of their conversations at the church. "Because I like protecting people," Michael answered simply. "My mother always said God gave us eyes to see who needs help and hands to reach out." The next Wednesday, they put their plan into action. Jennifer pretended to leave early, but returned through the back of the building. Michael guided her to a vantage point where they could document Richard tampering with the computers. At 8 o'clock, Richard appeared. Just as Michael had predicted, he went straight to the accounting computer and began accessing the bank accounts. Jennifer recorded everything on her phone, capturing his every move. But Richard noticed their presence before they could leave. When he saw them, his reaction was immediate and unexpected. Instead of trying to explain himself, he smirked and said, "Jennifer, how nice of you to be here. I was just about to call you. I caught your security guard trying to access the company accounts." The reverse accusation caught Jennifer off guard. Richard had anticipated them and was trying to flip the situation. He showed forged documents that supposedly proved Michael had tried to access the accounts. "Richard, we know the truth," said Jennifer, trying to stay calm. "The truth is, you're trying to frame me," Richard replied, keeping his aggressive stance. "Michael, did you really think you could bring me down? A security guard against a manager?" Richard's arrogance revealed his true personality. For years, he had built a facade of trustworthiness while systematically stealing from the company. Now cornered, he showed his real face. "I have proof," said Michael, holding up his folder of documents. Richard laughed scornfully. "Proof? You mean these poorly taken photos? Any lawyer could tear this apart in minutes." The situation was growing tense. Richard had prepared an elaborate counterattack, planting false evidence to frame Michael. Jennifer realized she had underestimated her former manager's cunning. "Richard, I've worked with you for 12 years, she said, trying to appeal to their shared history. "Why did you do this?" "Because you never truly valued me," he answered bitterly. 12 years managing your finances, 12 years as just an employee while you grew wealthy. I deserved more." Richard's partial confession confirmed their suspicions, but he quickly backtracked. "Not that it matters now. What matters is your security guard is trying to frame me with fabricated evidence." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, continuing. Richard's strategy was clever. He knew that in a battle of credibility, his word would carry more weight than Michael's. Years of working with Jennifer and his position in the company gave him the upper hand. "Jennifer, think carefully," Richard said, adopting a paternalistic tone. "This man works as a night guard. What knowledge could he possibly have about banking systems to document so-called crimes? It's obvious someone's using him." The manipulation attempt was clear, but Jennifer had changed. Weeks of observing Michael, seeing his dedication and integrity, had shifted her perspective. She wouldn't be fooled so easily again. "Richard, you just confessed you deserved more money," she said firmly. "And we have all of Michael's documentation showing your suspicious activities." "Documentation that could have easily been fabricated," Richard insisted. "Jennifer, are you really going to believe him over me?" At that moment, Michael stepped forward. "Mr. Johnson, I respect you, but I can't let you keep lying. I have more than just photos." Michael revealed he had recorded audio of Richard discussing the transfers over the phone. Using a recording app on his phone, he had captured incriminating conversations Richard had during his schemes. Richard paled as he realized his situation was becoming untenable. That's when he made a desperate move. He offered Michael money to destroy the evidence. "Listen, Michael," he said, his tone shifting completely. "You want to help the elderly, right? I can give you $50,000 right now. Enough to buy medicine for hundreds of people." The offer was tempting. With $50,000, Michael could help far more people than he ever could on his current salary. The temptation was immense, but he knew accepting would mean perpetuating injustice. "No, Mr. Johnson," Michael said firmly. "That's not how things work." Michael's refusal enraged Richard, who realized he had played all his cards. In one last act of desperation, he tried to physically destroy the evidence, lunging for the folder of documents. Jennifer quickly stepped between them, shielding Michael and the evidence. At that moment, she realized how blind she had been for years, trusting someone who saw her only as a source of income. "Richard, enough," she said firmly. "You're fired, and we'll handle this legally." In the following days, the company underwent a full audit that revealed the true extent of Richard's scheme. For years, he had siphoned off small but consistent amounts, accumulating significant losses. The discovery had unexpected positive consequences. Jennifer decided to use the experience as an opportunity for personal and professional transformation. Inspired by Michael's dedication, she created an official pharmaceutical assistance program for employees and the local community. Michael was promoted to coordinator of the company's new social program. Now he could help the elderly legally and systematically, with proper resources and institutional support. His personal mission had become part of the company's mission. Jennifer's transformation was profound. She began actively participating in the social initiatives, meeting the people who benefited from the program in person. The hierarchical distance she had maintained with employees gradually diminished. 3 months after the confrontation with Richard, the company opened a community pharmacy in the neighborhood where Michael's church was located. The facility offered subsidized medications and free distribution for cases of extreme need. On opening day, hundreds of people gathered to celebrate. Jennifer spoke about the importance of corporate social responsibility, but the true star was Michael, who received a standing ovation from the crowd. During the event, an elegant elderly woman with neatly styled white hair approached Jennifer. She looked familiar. "My dear," the woman said, touching Jennifer's arm, "may I speak with you?" Jennifer looked more closely and was stunned. It was her own mother, Mrs. Margaret Wilson, whom she hadn't seen in over 2 years. The woman seemed frailer than she remembered, but her eyes still sparkled with the same intelligence. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Jennifer asked, surprised. "I came to thank you," Mrs. Margaret replied with a smile. "Michael has been helping me with my medications for months. He never told me he worked for your company." The revelation left Jennifer speechless. Her own mother was among the people Michael had been helping, and she had never known. For years, she had been so focused on work that she had completely neglected her family. "Mom, why didn't you ever tell me you needed help?" Jennifer asked, her throat tightening. "Because you were always so busy," Mrs. Margaret answered kindly, though not hiding her hurt. "And because Michael asked me not to say anything. He didn't want you to feel obligated to help me out of pity." Michael's thoughtfulness in protecting both her and her mother moved Jennifer deeply. Even knowing their relationship, he had kept it confidential to preserve their dignity. "Forgive me, Mum," Jennifer said, hugging her with tears in her eyes. "I've been a terrible daughter." "You haven't been terrible, my dear," Mrs. Margaret replied, returning the embrace. "You just lost your way. But look at what you've created here today. Your mother is proud." The reunion with her mother broke the last of Jennifer's emotional barriers. There, in the midst of the community pharmacy celebration, she realized that true success wasn't in the company's numbers, but in the lives she could positively touch. Michael approached discreetly, sensing the emotion of the moment. "Mrs. Wilson, I hope you don't mind that I helped your mother without telling you." "Michael," Jennifer said, wiping her tears, "how could I possibly mind? You took care of her when I should have." "Families sometimes need bridges," Michael replied wisely. "Sometimes one person needs to care for someone so another can remember how to care." In the weeks that followed, Jennifer gradually grew closer to her mother. She discovered that Mrs. Margaret had hidden her financial struggles to avoid interfering with the company's growth. The woman's independence and pride had built a barrier that Michael managed to cross. The community pharmacy became a model project, drawing attention from the media and other businesses. Jennifer was invited to speak about social responsibility, but she always made sure to share the stage with Michael, acknowledging that the idea had come from his dedication. During one of these talks, a reporter asked Jennifer what the turning point in her business outlook had been. She looked at Michael, who was sitting in the audience beside Mrs. Margaret, and answered, "I learned that following someone can lead us to find ourselves. Sometimes we need to see the world through the eyes of someone who truly sees." The company began thriving like never before. The improved work environment, a result of Jennifer's new attitude, boosted productivity and employee morale. Clients also noticed the change, preferring to do business with a company that demonstrated human values. Michael continued living in his modest home and keeping his humble habits, but now he had institutional resources to expand his work. The elderly assistance network grew to other neighborhoods, always with the company's support. One evening, 6 months after the events that changed everything, Jennifer went to the church where it had all begun. She found Michael in his usual spot, kneeling before the altar, but this time she joined him. "What were you praying for?" she asked softly. "I was thanking my mother," Michael replied, "and telling her that maybe her mission was to teach me how to help others find what they'd lost." "What had I lost?" Jennifer asked. "Your family, your humanity, your ability to see beyond numbers," Michael answered. "But you didn't lose them forever. You just needed someone to show you the way back." Jennifer looked at the simple altar, decorated only with humble flowers and white candles. For the first time in years, she felt true peace. She wasn't praying for business or profits anymore. She was giving thanks for the lesson in humanity she had received. "Michael," she said, "do you think people can really change?" "I think people can find themselves," he replied. "Sometimes they're just lost, not broken." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Mrs. Margaret, who had become a regular at the church. The older woman sat beside her daughter, completing a circle that had formed organically. "What are you praying for today?" Mrs. Margaret asked. "For the wisdom to follow paths that make us better people," Jennifer answered. "And for the courage to let others follow us when we find something good," Michael added. The three sat in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. The church, which had been the setting for so much pain and discovery, was now a place of peace and gratitude. When they left the church that night, Jennifer realized the transformation was complete. She was no longer the cold, distant businesswoman who distrusted employees without reason. She had become someone who understood that true success lay in the ability to change lives. "Michael," she said before they parted, "thank you for teaching me that following someone can lead us to where we were always meant to be. And thank you for teaching me that sometimes it's worth being followed," he replied with a smile. Mrs. Margaret observed the exchange between them and smiled. Her daughter had finally found the balance between ambition and humanity. The circle was complete. In the months that followed, the story of Jennifer and Michael spread through the city. Other businesses began implementing similar social programs, creating a support network that benefited hundreds of families. The community pharmacy became the heart of a larger movement. Beyond medications, the place offered free medical consultations, health workshops, and a gathering space for seniors. Michael coordinated everything with the same dedication he had always shown. Jennifer, in turn, discovered that being a transformative leader was far more rewarding than just being a successful businesswoman. She had learned that true power lay in the ability to lift others up, not to dominate them. A year later, during the celebration of the community pharmacy's first anniversary, Jennifer was invited to give a speech. Standing before an audience that included employees, program beneficiaries, and local officials, she reflected on the journey she had taken. "A year ago," she began, "I thought I knew everything about management and leadership. I thought controlling meant leading, that suspicion meant protection. I was wrong about everything." The audience listened intently as she continued. "I learned that true leadership begins when we stop trying to control people and start trying to understand them. I learned that real protection comes from trust, not suspicion." Michael sat in the front row beside Mrs. Margaret and several seniors who had benefited from the program. They all listened to Jennifer's words with emotion. "But most of all," she went on, "I learned that sometimes we need to follow in order to learn how to lead. We need to be small to understand how to be great." The speech ended with a standing ovation. Jennifer stepped off the stage and went straight to Michael, embracing him warmly in front of everyone. "Thank you for showing me the way," she whispered. "Thank you for having the courage to follow," he replied. The company continued to grow, but now that growth included dimensions Jennifer had never considered before. Beyond profit, she measured success by the number of lives positively impacted and the satisfaction of her employees. Michael never wanted to be promoted beyond coordinator of the social program. He said his mission was to stay close to the people who needed help, not to manage from a distance. His humility remained his greatest strength. Mrs. Margaret became an active volunteer at the community pharmacy, helping other seniors navigate the healthcare system. Her experience as a beneficiary uniquely qualified her to assist others in the same situation. The bond between mother and daughter grew steadily stronger. Jennifer made it a rule to have a mandatory weekly lunch with Mrs. Margaret, no matter her work schedule. That commitment became sacred in her life. During one of those lunches, Mrs. Margaret made an observation that deeply moved Jennifer. "You know, my dear," she said, "I always knew you were a good person. You just needed someone to remind you of that." "How did you know?" Jennifer asked. "Because I raised you," Mrs. Margaret replied with a smile. "The seeds were always there. They just needed good soil to grow." The metaphor of good soil stayed with Jennifer. She realized Michael had been that good soil, providing the environment her best qualities needed to flourish. 2 years after it all began, the company was recognized as a model of corporate social responsibility. Jennifer Wilson received numerous awards, but always insisted on sharing the recognition with Michael Johnson and the entire team involved in the program. During an award ceremony, the host asked Jennifer what advice she would give to other entrepreneurs looking to implement similar changes. "My advice is simple," she replied. "Follow your employees. You'll be surprised by what you discover about them and about yourselves." Her answer drew laughter from the audience, but Jennifer was serious. Her experience following Michael had been the catalyst for a transformation she never imagined possible. At the end of the ceremony, a young entrepreneur approached her. "Mrs. Wilson," he said, "your story is inspiring, but it almost seems too good to be true. Can people really change that much?" Jennifer looked at the young man and smiled. They can discover themselves, and sometimes the discovery is so profound it feels like a complete change. "How can I know if I'm on the right path?" the young man asked. "When you start caring more about people's reactions to your work than market responses," Jennifer answered. "When you begin measuring success in smiles, not just numbers." The conversation with the young entrepreneur made Jennifer reflect on how much she had changed. 2 years earlier, she would have laughed at anyone who talked about measuring success in smiles. Now, she understood it was the only metric that truly mattered in the long run. On her way home, she passed by the church where it had all begun. The lights were on, indicating some evening activity was taking place. She decided to go inside to see what was happening. She found Michael leading a support group for elderly caregivers, sons and daughters facing the challenges of caring for sick parents, needing guidance and emotional support. Jennifer quietly took a seat in the back, watching Michael facilitate the meeting with the same kindness and wisdom he had shown her. He listened attentively to each person, offered practical advice, and above all created a safe space for them to share their struggles. "Caring for someone we love is both a privilege and a challenge," Michael told the group. "Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be ashamed of your limitations. You're doing something very important." A middle-aged woman, visibly emotional, raised her hand. "Michael, sometimes I feel guilty for getting frustrated with my mother when she forgets things. How do I deal with that guilt?" "Frustration is human," Michael replied. "Love doesn't mean never feeling frustrated. It means continuing to care even when you are." The simple but profound answer resonated with everyone in the room. Jennifer realized Michael had become not just a social program coordinator, but a true community leader. After the meeting, she approached him. "You never stop, do you?" she said with admiration. "The needs never stop," Michael replied. "And I've learned that when we have the chance to help, we should take it." "Who taught you that?" Jennifer asked. "My mother, mostly," he answered. "But also you." "Me?" Jennifer asked, surprised. "You taught me it's possible to turn resources into compassion, that it's possible to use position and power to lift others up," Michael explained. "Before the company's program, I could only help a few people. Now I can help hundreds." Michael's observation made Jennifer realize the transformation had been mutual. While he had taught her about humanity and compassion, she had given him the resources and structure to amplify his impact. "We make a good team," she said. "We always have," Michael replied. "We just needed to figure that out." 3 years after the journey began, Jennifer was in her office reviewing the company's annual reports. The numbers were impressive: 40% revenue growth, a 60% reduction in employee turnover, and measurable social impact on the lives of over 1,000 families. But what made her proudest was the qualitative report Michael prepared every month. It contained stories of people whose lives had been transformed by the program. Each story was a reminder of why she had changed her business approach. One story touched her particularly. It was about Mr. Walter, a 78-year-old man who had managed to control his diabetes thanks to medication provided by the community pharmacy. With his health stabilized, he had started playing the guitar again and now gave free lessons to children in the community. "A life saved can save other lives," Michael had written in the report. "Mr. Walter has already taught over 20 children to play the guitar. The music they've learned will last forever." Jennifer closed the report with tears in her eyes. Each of those stories was a direct result of the decision she had made that night at the church, when she chose to trust Michael instead of firing him. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Mrs. Margaret. "Sweetheart, can you come over tonight?" her mother asked. "I have a surprise for you." "Of course, Mom. Is something wrong?" Jennifer asked, concerned. "Nothing bad," Mrs. Margaret laughed. "Just come. You'll like it." That evening, Jennifer arrived at her mother's house and found a small surprise party. Michael was there, along with several employees from the company, beneficiaries of the social program, and family friends she hadn't seen in years. "What's going on?" she asked, confused. "We're celebrating," Mrs. Margaret said with a radiant smile. "3 years ago, I got my daughter back, and all of you got a true leader." The party was simple, but moving. Every person there shared a story about how Jennifer's change had impacted their lives. Employees spoke about the new work environment, beneficiaries expressed gratitude for the opportunities, and friends celebrated her personal growth. Michael was the last to speak. "Jennifer," he said in front of everyone, "you taught me that following someone can lead us to discover who we really are, but you also taught me that once we discover who we are, our responsibility is to help others make the same discovery." "And you?" Jennifer asked. "What did you discover about yourself?" "I discovered my mother was right," Michael replied, looking at the photograph he always carried in his pocket. "She always said our mission in life was to be a bridge for others. I just didn't know that sometimes we're also a bridge for ourselves." The party went on into the night, filled with conversation, laughter, and shared dreams for the future. Jennifer realized she was surrounded by people who truly cared about her, not just as a boss or businesswoman, but as a person. When the party ended and everyone had left, she stayed a little longer with Mrs. Margaret. "Mom, thank you for this," she said, hugging her. "I didn't do anything," Mrs. Margaret replied. "I just raised a special daughter and waited for her to remember that." "How did you know I'd remember?" Jennifer asked. "Because when you were little, you always shared your toys with the other children," Mrs. Margaret answered. "I knew that generosity was still somewhere inside you. It just needed to find its way back." The conversation with her mother brought back childhood memories Jennifer had forgotten. She remembered organizing games to include the shyest kids, sharing her lunch with classmates who forgot theirs. "Did I really change that much, or did I just become who I used to be?" she asked. "You grew up and found yourself," Mrs. Margaret replied. "Sometimes we lose our way as we grow, but the heart always remembers the path back." 4 years after that first night at the church, Jennifer was kneeling at the same altar once again. But now she wasn't alone. Dozens of people gathered there weekly for what they called the Circle of Gratitude, a time to give thanks for the transformations in their lives. Michael continued coordinating the meetings, but now there were other facilitators he had trained. The movement had grown organically, spreading to other churches and communities. "What are you grateful for today?" Michael asked the group. One by one, people shared their gratitude. There were former employees who had learned about compassionate leadership and applied it in their new jobs. There were seniors who had regained their health and dignity. There were families reunited after years of separation. When it was Jennifer's turn, she looked around the packed church. "I'm grateful for learning that following one person can lead us to guide many others," she said. "I'm grateful for discovering that true wealth lies in how many lives we can touch, not in how much money we can accumulate. And I'm grateful," she continued, looking straight at Michael, "for finding someone who taught me that suspecting others makes us small, but trusting them makes us great." Michael smiled and gave her a subtle nod. In the front row, Mrs. Margaret wiped away tears of pride and emotion. After the meeting, the three of them walked together down the quiet street. It was a starry night, and the air was full of the promise of new beginnings. "Do you think our story could have been different if I hadn't followed Michael that night?" Jennifer asked. "Maybe," Michael replied. "But I believe some people are meant to find each other. There might have been another opportunity. Or perhaps," Mrs. Margaret added wisely, "you created the opportunity you were destined to have." Her words made them all reflect. Jennifer realized her decision to follow Michael hadn't just been curiosity or suspicion. On some level, she knew she needed to better understand the people who worked for her. "I think I was searching for something without knowing what it was," Jennifer said. "And I found far more than I ever thought possible. And I think I was trying to protect something without knowing how," Michael said. And I discovered the best protection is transparency. And I think I was just waiting for you two to find each other, Mrs. Margaret said with a mischievous smile. Mothers have a sense for these things. The three of them laughed together, walking toward the future they had built on trust, compassion, and mutual discovery. 5 years later, Jennifer's company had become a case study in business schools. Students from across the country came to learn about the management model she had developed, always with Michael joining the presentations. During one of these visits, a student asked Jennifer what the secret had been behind the success of their transformation. "There's no secret," she answered. "Just one simple truth. When we stop trying to control people and start trying to understand them, we discover possibilities we never imagined." "But how does that translate into practical results?" the student pressed. "Employees who feel valued work better," Michael explained. "Clients who recognize human values in a company prefer doing business with it. A community that benefits from a company supports it more. It's a positive cycle." "And personally?" another student asked. "How has it changed you as people?" Jennifer and Michael exchanged a glance before answering. "I learned that real leadership is about serving, not being served," Jennifer said. "And true power is about empowering others, not dominating them. And I learned that a person can plant seeds in others without even realizing it," said Michael. "That simple acts of kindness can have immeasurable consequences." The students' visits always ended with a trip to the community pharmacy and the church. The young people were impressed by the simplicity and effectiveness of the programs in place. During one of these visits, Jennifer realized she had become a sort of unintentional mentor. Young entrepreneurs sought her advice. Employees from other companies asked for guidance on leadership, and even other businesswomen wanted to understand her management model. "You've become a reference," Michael remarked during one of their weekly conversations. "It scares me a little," Jennifer confessed. "What if I don't know how to give the right advice?" "You just need to tell your story," Michael replied. "The truth always finds its way." Michael's observation reassured her. Jennifer realized she didn't need to be perfect or have all the answers. Her authentic experience was enough to inspire others. One day, she received an unexpected invitation. A university wanted her to teach a course on transformational leadership. The proposal included Michael as a co-facilitator and the opportunity to develop a curriculum based on their real-life experience. "What do you think?" she asked Michael. "I think our story can help others write their own," he replied. "And teaching has always been a way to keep learning." They accepted the invitation and spent months developing a program that combined business theory with practical experiences of personal and organizational transformation. The first course was an impressive success. Executives from large corporations sat alongside small business owners, all eager to learn about authentic leadership and social impact. During one of the classes, Jennifer shared the full story of her journey, from her early suspicions about Michael to the complete transformation of her business perspective. "The question I get asked the most," she told the class, "is whether I was ever afraid to trust my employees so much. And my answer is always the same. I'm far more afraid not to trust." "Why?" asked one executive. "Because when we don't trust, we limit people's potential and our own potential for growth," she explained. "When we trust, we create space for extraordinary things to happen," Michael added. "And because distrust breeds more distrust, but trust breeds creativity, dedication, and genuine loyalty." By the end of the course, participants had developed their own plans for organizational transformation. Many stayed in touch afterward, sharing successes and challenges in their own journeys of change. 6 years after that first night at the church, Jennifer was reviewing thank you letters from former students. There were stories of companies that had implemented social programs, leaders who had changed their management styles, and people who had reconnected with their deepest values. One letter in particular moved her. It was from a young businesswoman who had followed a suspicious employee and discovered he was using company resources to help abandoned animals. Instead of firing him, she created an official animal welfare program. "Our story is multiplying," Jennifer told Michael, showing him the letter. "As it should," he replied. "Good stories inspire other good stories." That night, Jennifer went to the church alone. She wanted a moment of personal reflection on the journey she had taken. She knelt on the same pew where she had first observed Michael and closed her eyes. In her mind, she revisited all the crucial moments: the decision to follow him, the discovery in the church, the mistaken suspicions, the revelation about Richard, the reconciliation with her mother, and all the transformations that followed. "Thank you," she whispered into the emptiness of the church. "Thank you for showing me that following someone can lead us to the place we were always meant to be." When she opened her eyes, she found Michael sitting on the bench beside her. "You always show up at the right time," she said, smiling. "Or maybe you always come here when I need to be here," he replied. "Why did you come today?" Jennifer asked. "To give thanks too," Michael said, "and to share some news." Michael revealed he had been invited to coordinate a national program for elderly assistance. The work would involve traveling across the country to implement community pharmacies and train local leaders. "It's an incredible opportunity," Jennifer said, though her heart ached at the thought of losing her journey partner. "I'm not going to accept it," Michael said, surprising her. "Why?" "It would be perfect for you," Jennifer insisted. "Because I've learned some partnerships are too precious to break," Michael explained, "and because we still have so much work to do here." "But think of how many people you could help nationwide," Jennifer argued. "And think of how many we can keep helping if we maintain our strong foundation here," Michael replied. "Besides, others can handle the national work. Our local partnership is unique." Michael's decision to stay moved Jennifer deeply. She realized they had built not just a professional partnership, but a true and lasting friendship. "Are you sure?" she asked one last time. "Absolutely," Michael answered. "My mother always said we should plant where our seed can grow best. My seed grew here with you all." That night they stayed in the church for hours, planning their next steps to expand the program's local impact. They brainstormed ideas for vocational workshops, community daycares, and even a cultural center. When they finally left the church, Jennifer looked back one last time. The place that had been the setting for so much pain, discovery, and growth would remain a meeting point for those seeking transformation. "Michael," she said as they walked down Maple Avenue, "if you could go back in time and change one thing in our story, what would it be?" Michael thought for a moment before answering. "I'd change the fear I felt at the beginning," he said. "I would have talked to you about Richard much sooner." "And I'd change the distrust I felt," Jennifer said. "I would have spoken to you instead of following you." "But then," Michael observed, "maybe our story would have been different. Maybe we wouldn't have learned the lessons we needed." "True," Jennifer agreed. "Sometimes the winding path is the only one that leads us to the right destination." They said goodbye at the corner, each heading home, but carrying the certainty that they had built something lasting and meaningful together. End of story. Now tell me, what did you think of Jennifer and Michael's story? Do you think the businesswoman made the right choices in trusting the security guard? Share your thoughts on this journey of transformation and discovery in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.